Talking boxing next with Michael Montero from Montero on Boxing, the YouTube channel, an expert on all things with the sweet science. He's coming up next with Dave Smith here at SB Nation Radio and SBNationRadio.com. It's Dave Smith and the Dave Smith Show here at SB Nation Radio and SBNationRadio.com. 800-777-2907. Is the guest ready, Producer Robert? We got him. Okay, let's get out to the guest hotline right now. Let's talk some boxing with one of our favorites here in the great YouTube channel, Montero on Boxing, that has taken the world by storm here. And now we're recently moved from Los Angeles to Atlanta, Georgia, the great Mike Montero. What's up, Mike?
Hey, what's up, Dave? How's everything going in sunny California, my friend?
Sunny California. You made the move. I bet you got a lot of house down there in Atlanta compared to what you can get in Los Angeles. It's probably a brilliant move on your part.
So far, we're loving it. You know, the food's really good. I've picked up a few pounds. I got to slow down on eating. This southern food is really, really awesome. So I got to slow down on that and get back to the gym. But yeah, we bought a small mansion here for a fraction of the price that a shoebox cost in LA.
Yeah, see, you're doing the right thing. Absolutely. Well, Mike, you were there in Dallas at Jerry World watching Mikey Garcia go up against Errol Spence, and boy, it's just it looked like kind of a mismatch when it was first announced. And then a lot of people in boxing kind of like Mikey as we got closer to the fight, but just too small, and he couldn't manage to find a way inside, couldn't get inside that jab. And Errol Spence, with tremendous boxing skills and a reach and height and weight advantage, and it just looked like Mikey was way too small in there.
Yeah, size absolutely matters. That weight divisions exist in boxing for a reason. But I got to tell you, Dave, I was maybe 20 feet from the ring, and just based on the body language I saw from Mikey Garcia from about the second or third round on, I think he knew he was being outclassed. I saw Errol Spence completely outbox Mikey Garcia in every aspect of boxing. I mean, just the footwork, the head movement, the distance, the range, the angles. And Errol Spence said in the post-fight press conference that he heard all the people in the media taking Mikey Garcia and saying that, Mikey Garcia was the experienced boxer and the more skilled boxer. And he took offense to that. And he wanted to prove a point by thoroughly outboxing Garcia. And that's just what he did. It was a masterclass performance. I think a star was born in Texas.
Yeah. And the sad thing is, Mike, and we talk about this a lot, as much as we love the sport, the best fights in boxing are the ones, unfortunately, that don't get made. And now we're getting Amir Khan against Bud Crawford coming up here soon. We got Mikey Garcia against Errol Spence. What should have happened in Dallas a couple of Saturdays ago, we should have had Mikey Garcia against Lomachenko, and we should have had Bud Crawford against Errol Spence. But because of rival promoters and TV networks, we don't get the fights that we want to see.
Yeah, it's a problem in boxing that we talk about all the time. In one respect, we're getting more and more fights on different platforms. ESPN has a deal right now. We see fights on Fox regularly, through Premier Boxing Champions, Showtime, the new streaming service, The Zone. ESPN is a streaming service now, ESPN Plus. So we're seeing boxing all over the place. We're seeing Friday night cards, Thursday night cards. There was just a card on Fox Sports 1 Sunday night, just now. It just ended right before I called you. So there's boxing all over the place. But the guys that should be fighting each other are not fighting each other. You talked about Mikey Garcia and Errol Spence. That should have been Mikey Garcia and Vasiliy Lomachenko. Lomachenko has a fight coming up in L.A. next month. Next month in New York, Terence Crawford fighting Amir Khan. We have to get Errol Spence and Terence Crawford in the ring together. That is this generation's Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns. It really could be. These guys just got to come together. At some point, you think that the dollar signs will be so great that they'll work together across promotional lines. What is going to make it tough is the different network contracts, because let's talk, Errol Spence, he's a PBC guy. That's Fox and Showtime. That's where PBC fighters fight. Terence Crawford, he's with Top Rank. They're on ESPN. So if those two do fight, which network do they do it on? Obviously, that's going to be a pay-per-view, but how does all that work? So you have these networks doing multi-million-dollar contracts with these fighters and these promotional platforms. That makes it even more complicated. So it's complicated stuff, but I do think that at some point we're going to get Spence to Crawford, and I'm telling you, that is this generation.
Yep.
Leonard Hearns.
That's Leonard Duran. That's Leonard Hearns. That's Leonard Hagler. That's Hagler Hearns. That's everything. I mean, for this generation, that's the fight I think that all really hardcore boxing fans want to see more than any other is Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. Now, if they ever do match up, Mike Montero, I think Spence is a little too big for him. I would like Spence by decision in that fight, but that would be hotly contested because Bud is a great fighter. Who would you like in that?
You know, really it comes down to timing. If they fought right now, I think I would favor Bud Crawford by decision just because of his experience. He is the smaller guy. He started as a lightweight, so he's come up. He's at boxing now in his third division at welterweight. So Spence is naturally a little bigger, stronger. He's the younger guy. But right now, Crawford just has too much skills, too much experience. And he's just fought the better opposition overall. So I'd favor him. However, with boxing politics, you know how these things work. It's probably going to take 2-3 years before these guys fight. By the time that happens, Spence will be that much better. And I think at that point, you have to favor him heavily. So it all comes down to timing.
And he's so huge as a welterweight. In 2 or 3 years, won't he be up in the middleweight division by that point?
He'll definitely be at 154 pounds, which is junior middleweight. You know, actually, I interviewed him last year for a piece I did for Boxing Monthly magazine. I talked to him and his trainer, Derek James, and they said that they think they can make 47 for a couple more years, 147 pounds. They do anticipate moving to 154. They're not sure about 160, though. You know, you think at 160 pounds, though, you've got Canelo Alvarez, you've got Gennady Golovkin, you've got some names there. So if they could move to 160, you know, after maybe fighting a Bud Crawford and taking care of business, if he wins that fight, if he could go to 160 and fight Canelo Alvarez 3-4 years from now, think of how huge that fight would be. And by then, that new stadium in Las Vegas will be finished. So I'm just putting it out there, Dave. There's possibilities here, baby. Big possibilities.
You know, we got Mikey and Errol Spence, a fight that shouldn't have happened. It should have been Spence and Bud, of course. And now Bud's going to fight Amir Khan, you know, very fast-handed guy, good boxer, a lot of skill, but he's got a glass jaw. And Terence is going to put him to sleep. I think that's kind of another waste of time and a fight that we really don't want as boxing fans.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's pay-per-view. So, you know, I don't know if the problem is when these fighters start going to pay-per-view, their promoters get involved, their publicists, their all these analyst people, these financial analysts, and they start whacking up all the pay-per-view numbers because they want to take that to the negotiating table. So we just had Errol Spence fight on pay-per-view, right? Well, don't think for a second that Bob Arum and Team Bud Crawford weren't looking at that and taking notes, because now they're about to fight on pay-per-view. And they're going to match their pay-per-view numbers and go back and forth. And this is all going to be part of the goo, the messiness of that fight eventually being made. They're going to compare the pay-per-view numbers. But, yeah, I agree with you. Terence Crawford, you know, Amir Khan, he'll be competitive early on. He'll box well early on. And he will bring fans from the UK. So from a brand-building perspective, I understand why Top Rank is doing this. They will bring fans from the UK over to New York. But you got to think, Terence Crawford at some point is going to connect with the jaw, and that's all she wrote. He's going to knock him out.
How about Danny Jacobs and Canelo Alvarez? Danny Jacobs is a beautiful boxer. He's bigger than Canelo. He gave Triple G hell, and a lot of people think he won that fight at Madison Square Garden. How do you think he does against Canelo?
You know, Dave, I'm really, really excited for that fight. And it's on DAZN, the streaming platform, which is $10 a month. You know, they just announced they're going to raise their price to $20 a month. So hurry up, fans, and sign up now so you could save money, because I think it's $10 a month for the first year, something like that. Anyway, we haven't seen Canelo at the full middleweight limit against a guy this tall, this rangy, and with the defensive boxing ability that Daniel Jacobs has. So I'm really curious to see how Canelo handles that. On the flip side, we haven't seen Jacobs fight in Vegas under the bright lights like this. He had a big fight with Golovkin, but that was in New York. He's going to be in Vegas. That's Canelo's territory. He's the new guy there. Big bright lights of Vegas. How does Jacobs handle that moment? Also, Canelo is so improved. His trainer, Eddie Reynoso, has done such a great job with him. I really do think he has underrated defensive ability and head movement. And I got to say, you know, I'm curious to see how he handles a guy who's taller and longer. We saw he looked to me very improved in that rematch with Golovkin. And he fought a better style for Golovkin, who's a swarmer who comes at you. Jacobs is a boxer. He's a mover. Canelo is going to have to be the stalker in that fight, and I want to see what he could do against Jacobs. I favor Canelo, but I think it's going the distance. I think it's going to be very competitive.
Why can't these guys, you talk about PBC with Errol Spence and ESPN Top Rank with Bud Crawford and the different Lomachenko and Mikey and all these guys. Why can't the people who run these networks and the promoters, like grown men, get in a room together, set aside the greed, set aside the egos, and make fights that boxing fans want to see? There's plenty of money for both of them to make. Why can't they get into a room and make this happen?
Well, why can't Congress balance the budget? The thing is, Dave, if they're making money and the fans are showing up, there's no real incentive to go for the huge fight across network lines unless it makes just so much money that it's stupid not to do it, like we saw with Mayweather-Pacquiao. Right now, we talked about Spence Garcia. There were 47,000 fans at AT&T Stadium. And you think, March Madness was kicking up, Major League Baseball starting, you got NBA, NHL, there's all sports choices all over the place. And 47,000 people showed up for that fight. So if there's, everything's funny when you're making money, right? At some point, though, Spence is going to run out of opponents. Crawford's going to run out of opponents, and they're going to have to fight each other if they want the big bucks. It'll happen.
June 1st, Madison Square Garden, Anthony Joshua comes across the pond for the first time in his career. He fights in America, defending against Jarrell Big Baby Miller, 6'4", 300 pounds, and he's from New York, fighting on his home turf, a former kickboxer. Despite all that, having a home fight for him, does he have any chance to win this fight?
I think he has a very, very good chance. Of course, I favor Anthony Joshua, but Jarrell Big Baby Miller, there's still a lot of question marks around him, right? Because he's making a quantum leap in opposition. The thing is, though, you mentioned he's a former kickboxer. He also sparred with Vladimir Klitschko and the Klitschko brothers for years, so he has that kind of experience behind the scenes sparring. He's one of those guys that looks very comfortable in the ring. He never looks uncomfortable. He's always relaxed, almost James Toney-esque. I'm not comparing him to that level of skill, but just in the way James Toney was so relaxed when he fought. That's how Jarrell Miller is. He's huge. He weighs over 300 pounds for his fight, but he moves like an NFL lineman, because those guys in the NFL, they're 300 pounds, but they move so well, right? That's how Big Baby Miller moves. And we just don't know how he's going to respond when he takes a hard shot from Anthony Joshua. If he can take those shots and he can keep coming and put 300 pounds, probably more like 320 between you and me, probably more like 320. If he can put 320 pounds of pressure on Anthony Joshua for 9, 10, 11 rounds, and let's remember, Joshua, he's making his American debut. He's got all the pressure on him. He's supposed to win. He's got to win and look good doing it, because they're trying to make that big fight down the line with Deontay Wilder. So will the pressure get to him in those later rounds? I don't know. But again, that's on the zone. It's $10. That normally would be a pay-per-view fight. That'd be $80. Now you're getting it on that streaming service for $10.
Great stuff, Mike. Good talking to you as always. And real quick, we got about 10 seconds. Where can we find your YouTube channel?
YouTube at Montero on Boxing. You guys check out my podcast, The Neutral Corner. It's on iTunes, Spotify, everywhere.
Good stuff, Mike. Good talking to you again. Thanks for coming on.
All right, Dave.
There he goes, the great Mike Montero with Dave Smith here at SB Nation Radio.
Calling all sports. What's a more likely destination for Antonio Brown after the failed trade between the Bills and Steelers?